I came home from work that Tuesday evening like I always did. Boots heavy with dust, shirt clinging with sweat, lunch pail in hand. Normally, the smell of dinner or at least the clatter of pans filled the air. But that night the house was as quiet as a graveyard. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from punishment. Heather was sitting at the kitchen table, phone in her hand, scrolling like she was alone in the world. No glance, no hello, not even a twitch to acknowledge I'd walked through the door. I set my keys on the counter. The sound echoed, sharp. "How was your day?" I asked. Nothing, not even a shift in her posture. She just kept swiping her screen, lips pressed tight like a soldier guarding a secret. I tried again. "Everything okay?" Her answer was to get up, push in her chair like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away, and walk upstairs. The bedroom door closed with just enough force to send a message. That was day one. It all started over something small, the way these things usually do. A simple talk about chores. She'd been grumbling that laundry was always her job. Even though I handled the yard, the bills, the busted sink, the cars, all the heavy lifting that keeps a house from falling apart. I suggested maybe we split things more fairly, swap jobs now and then. Reasonable, I thought. She took it as a declaration of war. The next morning, her silence had hardened into stone. She poured her coffee without offering me any, sat down at the table, phone in hand, eyes locked on the glowing screen. I was there, but I wasn't. Breakfast? Gone. Small talk? Non-existent. Even eye contact, the most basic human courtesy, had been erased. Yet when her phone rang and her sister called, her voice lit up like summer fireworks. Laughter, warmth, stories, the full Heather I used to know, just not for me. For me, she saved the vacuum of her silence. The days stacked up like bricks in a wall. No meals made, no words spoken, no acknowledgement that we shared a life. She wasn't mad in the traditional sense. No shouting, no slam dishes, no red-faced tirades. Just that suffocating, calculated quiet. At first, I wondered if I should break it. Apologize even though I hadn't done a damn thing wrong. Crawl back just to get a morsel of warmth. But every time I considered it, I thought of her smile on the phone with her friends, the way her voice carried life for everyone else but me. This didn't hurt. This wasn't sadness. This was punishment. And I wasn't about to be her prisoner. So I kept moving. I went to work. I fixed what needed fixing. I ate my meals standing at the counter if I had to. And every night, I came home to the same scene. Heather at the table, eyes on her phone, pretending I didn't exist. It was supposed to break me down. Instead, it lit a fire. By the end of the first week, I knew this wasn't just pouting. Heather's silence wasn't some emotional bruise she was nursing. No, it was a weapon, a deliberate tactic. I'd seen her play this game before. Years back, she cut her sister off for nearly a month because of some argument about babysitting. Not a word until the sister caved, apologized, and begged to be let back into Heather's good graces. That was her pattern. Punish with silence, force surrender, then act like forgiveness was a gift only she could grant. Now, she was running the same playbook on me. The thing is, I'm not her sister. I'm not some timid relative desperate for her approval. I'm her husband, a man who's hauled himself out of enough tough spots to know when he's being played. It became clear one Saturday afternoon. I was sitting on the couch, beer in hand, watching the game. Heather walked in, crossed the room, and hovered near the kitchen doorway. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just cleared her throat, loud enough that I couldn't miss it. That was supposed to be the hook. Normally, I'd take the bait, turn, ask if she needed something, try to bridge the gap. This time, I didn't even flinch. I took a sip, kept my eyes glued to the screen, and let her throat clearings echo into nothing. The silence that followed was heavier than anything she dealt me all week. Because now she knew I wasn't playing. And that changed everything. That night at dinner, or what passed for dinner, she made herself a salad. Just one plate. No second fork. No want some. Nothing. She sat at the opposite end of the table, phone propped up like a dinner companion, scrolling through her social feed with a smile that might as well have been a slap. I ate leftovers cold from the fridge, standing at the counter, taking my time with every bite. She wanted me to feel excluded. Instead, I gave her nothing to react to. No sighs, no questions, no pleading looks across the table. Just indifference. Inside, though, I could feel the burn of my anger sharpening. Not the wild, reckless kind that makes a man do stupid things, but the slow, steady kind that carves steel. The more she tried to punish me, the more I saw it for what it was. Control. She thought silence gave her power. I decided silence would give me freedom. Over the next few days, I leaned into it. When she walked into a room, I didn't scramble to make space or start talking. I kept doing what I was doing, reading, cleaning my tools, watching the game. She became like background noise, a ghost drifting through her own house. The irony was rich. She wanted me to beg for her attention, but the more she starved me of it, the less I cared. The leash she thought she had me on had snapped, and she didn't even realize it yet. The power dynamic shifted in ways so subtle she couldn't track it. She'd cough, sigh, shift in her chair. All those little signals meant to drag me back into orbit, and every time I ignored them, I let the silence stretch until it stopped being her weapon and became her prison. Because here's the truth. When someone tries to control you with silence, the worst thing you can do is feed it. Don't chase it. Don't fill it. Just let it hang there until they choke on their own emptiness. By the end of that second week, I could see it in her eyes. Behind the blank face, behind the phone glued to her hand, she was unsettled. The game wasn't working. I wasn't folding. And for the first time in years, I felt something dangerous. Free. By day 10, the house sounded like a morgue. No laughter, no clatter of dishes, no music, not even arguments. Just silence, stretched thin as wire. That's when I realized something. If she was going to erase me from her world, I might as well reclaim the parts of mine she'd buried. So, I went digging in the hall closet, past the winter coats and boxes of forgotten junk, until I found the old case. Black leather, cracked at the edges, brass latches dulled with age. My saxophone. I hadn't touched it in years. Heather hated the thing, said it was too loud, too messy, too much like a hobby for teenagers, not grown men. Every time I'd brought it out, she'd roll her eyes, make a comment, or claim she had a headache. Eventually, I gave in and stopped, put it away, buried that part of myself under layers of compromise. Not anymore. I carried the case into the living room, right past her as she sat at the kitchen table scrolling her phone. She didn't look up, but I could feel her attention tightening, like a tripwire pulled taut. I sat on the couch, opened the case, and lifted the sax into my lap. The brass had tarnished a little, but it still felt right in my hands. Heavy, solid, alive. I tightened the reed, licked my lips, and blew. The first note was rough, cracked from years of neglect, but it filled the room like a gunshot. Heather's head twitched, eyes darting up for a split second before snapping back to her phone. I grinned. This was war. I kept going, fumbling at first, then finding my rhythm. The sound was raw, jagged, imperfect, but it was mine. Notes bounced off the walls, rolled through the kitchen, and climbed the stairs. Every wail and squeal was a declaration. I'm here. You don't get to erase me. Heather slammed a cabinet upstairs. Applause. She shut the bedroom door with enough force to rattle a picture frame. Encore. And me? I just played louder. By the second night, my fingers remembered the old scales. By the third, I was riffing blues lines that carried the weight of every long day I'd ever lived. I wasn't just filling the silence she gave me, I was drowning it. A funny thing happened after that. The more I played, the lighter I felt. Work stress, her cold shoulder, the loneliness of those meals eaten at the counter. It all melted into the music. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what she thought of me. I was thinking about myself. One night, when I wrapped up a solo, I looked over and caught her staring from the kitchen doorway. Not with admiration, not with curiosity, with frustration. She wanted me to put it down, to apologize for the noise, to fold back into her rules. But here's the catch. She couldn't say a damn word without breaking her precious silence. and that meant she was trapped in the very game she created. I smiled at her, nodded like I was acknowledging an audience, and launched into another tune. Her face twisted. She spun on her heel and stomped upstairs again. Every slammed door was a victory. Every creak of the floorboards as she stormed around was proof she was losing her grip. And every note I played was another piece of myself stitched back together. By day 14, I didn't even care if I was good or bad. I was alive again. My lungs burned. My fingers ached. My chest buzzed from the sound. I'd play until midnight, set the horn down, and sleep better than I had in years. She thought her silence would suffocate me. Instead, it gave me back my breath. By day 12, I could feel her tension vibrating through the walls. Heather had built her fortress out of silence, but every note I played was a hammer blow against it. She tried different tactics, more exaggerated sighs, more throat clears, even lingering in the hallway like a shadow waiting to be noticed. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I poured myself a drink, polished the brass on my sax, and let the music carry me. That night, I was working through a blues riff, slow and heavy, when she finally cracked. She came down the stairs barefoot, arms crossed, face twisted like she'd just bitten into a lemon. She stood there a minute, waiting for me to stop. I didn't. I leaned harder into the melody, eyes half closed, lips pressed to the reed until the last note faded out like smoke. Her first words in nearly 2 weeks cut through the air. "You sound awful." That was it. 2 weeks of silence, and the only thing she could offer was venom. Not hi, not let's talk, not even anger that made sense. Just an insult designed to stick a knife where she thought I was vulnerable. I set the saxophone down gently, like I hadn't heard her. Then I looked her straight in the eye. "So that's what breaks the silence? An insult?" She blinked. Her mouth opened, then shut again. She hadn't expected me to call it out. She thought I'd scramble, defend myself, maybe even apologize for daring to take up space in my own living room. Instead, I waited, calm, steady. The ball was in her court, and she had nothing. "You used to be better," she muttered, turning toward the stairs. I leaned back, resting my arm along the couch. "Guess I got rusty. Silence will do that to a man." She froze for half a second before climbing the stairs again, every step heavier than the last. That was the moment I knew. Her silence hadn't been about healing or cooling off or giving space. It had been about control, plain and simple. And the second she opened her mouth, all that control evaporated. Her first words in weeks had revealed her cards. She didn't want resolution. She wanted dominance. And I wasn't giving it to her. After her little outburst about my playing, the air in the house shifted. The silence wasn't clean anymore. It was jagged, restless. She'd shown her hand, and now every slammed door, every heavy step sounded less like power and more like desperation. That's when I decided the house was mine again. For years, Heather had treated every room like it was her kingdom. The living room had to be arranged her way, with throw pillows nobody used and candles nobody lit. The kitchen was her sacred space, where I wasn't allowed to so much as rearrange a spice jar. The garage? She called it Clutter Central, and nagged me any time I left a project half-finished. But if she wanted to act like I didn't exist, then fine. I'd live like I didn't need her permission. Started small. One Saturday morning, I pushed the living room couch to the opposite wall. She liked some feng shui nonsense she'd read online. I preferred it facing the TV straight on, so that's where it went. The rug got rolled up, the table shifted, the whole room opened up the way I wanted it. Heather came downstairs, phone in hand, and froze. She glanced around, lips pressed tight, but said nothing. I smiled, flipped on the game, and stretched out across my newly claimed couch. Next came the kitchen. I cleared out the glass jars of quinoa and chia seeds she swore we'd eat but never did, tossed them in the trash, and stocked the pantry with real food. Beans, pasta, jerky, coffee, the kind of stuff a man actually uses. Her collection of decorative mugs, boxed up and shoved in the basement. My plain, sturdy ones sat neatly in their place. But the real victory was the garage. I hauled the dusty table saw out of the corner, cleared the space, and got to work. The first rip of lumber screamed through the air, drowning out every ounce of silence she tried to feed me. The sawdust hit my skin. The smell of cut pine filled the air, and for the first time in years, that garage felt alive. Heather poked her head in once, wrinkling her nose. "It's too loud." I didn't even look up. "That's the sound of progress." She rolled her eyes and left, slamming the door. The saw buzzed louder. Every evening after work, I'd head straight to the garage, built a new shelf for my tools, carved a cutting board from a thick slab of oak, started sketching plans for a workbench. The rhythm of cutting, sanding, staining became its own kind of therapy. Funny thing was, the more I worked with my hands, the less I cared about hers being idle. Her silence no longer mattered because the house echoed with something better: creation. By the end of the third week, the place looked different. The living room was mine. The kitchen was stocked the way I wanted. The garage had become a workshop humming with life. Every corner of the house she once controlled had been reclaimed piece by piece. Heather's reaction said it all. She didn't nag, didn't order me to change things back. She just stared, stunned, as if she realized her grip had slipped without her even noticing. And every time I fired up that saw, I smiled. Because peace doesn't come from quiet. It comes from knowing the space you live in finally reflects who you are. By the fourth week, the game had turned completely. Heather had set out to punish me with her silence, but what she didn't count on was me enjoying it. The house was mine again. My music filled the evenings, and the garage had become a cathedral of sawdust and steel. I wasn't just surviving her quiet war, I was thriving in it, and she knew it. I could see it in the way she hovered more. Standing in the doorway when I cooked myself dinner, lingering by the garage when the saw screamed through a 2x4, peeking around corners when I laughed at a TV show. She was starving for a reaction, for proof that her silence still held me hostage. But there was nothing left to feed on. One night, I caught her pacing the kitchen while on the phone. I was in the garage, sanding down a maple board, the hum of the sander masking her words until she raised her voice. "I don't get it," she hissed into the phone. "He's acting like he doesn't even care." The sander stopped. My chest tightened, not with pain but with clarity. That was it. That was the truth laid bare. This whole month hadn't been about a fight over chores or some bruised feelings. It had been about control. She wanted me crawling, begging, desperate for her approval. Instead, I'd built a life without it, and she couldn't stand it. I turned the sander back on and let the noise swallow her voice. Over the next few days, her conversations changed. Less smug, more frantic. When she spoke to her friends, I caught phrases like, "He's different," or "I don't know what to do." She'd glance at me out of the corner of her eye, waiting for me to crack, but all she got was indifference. At dinner one night, her salad, my steak. She tried to bait me, pushed the lettuce around her plate with exaggerated sighs, muttered under her breath, even clanged her fork against the bowl. I ate in silence, cut my meat, chewed slowly, and enjoyed every bite. For the first time, she wasn't the one giving silence. She was choking on it. What she didn't realize was that I'd stopped playing weeks ago. This wasn't a battle anymore, it was a wake-up call. I had discovered something in the quiet she forced on me. Peace. No nagging. No criticism. No constant tension. Just me, my music, my tools, my thoughts. A man can get used to that, and that scared her more than anything. I remember stepping out of the garage one evening, covered in sawdust, and finding her waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes burning. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, like the words wouldn't come. Finally, she shook her head and stormed off, muttering something I couldn't hear. But I didn't chase her, didn't ask. I didn't care, because the truth was simple. She'd lost me in her own silence. By the time day 28 rolled around, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the uneasy kind where you're waiting for the next argument, the next jab, the next cold shoulder. Real peace. For straight weeks without Heather's voice tearing me down had been the best month of my marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. She thought silence would break me. Instead, it saved me. That morning, I woke early, made my own coffee, and sat at the kitchen table. My kitchen table now, with a notepad. I sketched out 2 notes. One was short, almost playful, a thank you. The other was final, legal, undeniable. After work, I drove downtown to a lawyer's office. Plain building, 3rd floor, wood-paneled walls. I told the lawyer exactly what I wanted. Clean break, no dragging it out, no theatrics. He nodded, slid the paperwork across the desk, and I signed. Just like that, the gears were in motion. On the way home, I stopped by a florist. Not red roses, those were for romance. I bought white, pure, simple, quiet, the color of fresh stars. Back at the house, I placed them in a vase right on the kitchen table where her silence had first started. Then I wrote the first note, folded it carefully, and slid it beside the flowers. It read, "Thank you for the best month of our marriage." Short, sharp, ambiguous enough to make her head spin. Then I tucked the divorce papers into a folder with the second note. "This piece is what I want for the rest of my life. With or without you, preferably without." That night, I pulled out the saxophone again. I played not to drown her out, not to spite her, but for me. Every note was steady, strong, free. I thought about the years I'd given away to compromise, to walking on eggshells, to silences that weren't mine. And I knew I was done. When I set the horn down, the house was quiet again. But it wasn't her silence anymore. It was mine. And it was perfect. Day 29 started like all the others. I got up, made my own breakfast, and poured my own coffee. Heather sat at the table, scrolling her phone like always, still locked in her stubborn game. But I could feel it, the silence was wearing thin. She wanted me to fold. She needed me to crawl back. Instead, I'd flourished. And now, she couldn't stand not knowing where I stood. That evening, she finally cracked. I was in the living room, polishing the brass on my saxophone, when she stormed in. Hands on hips, eyes blazing, lips tight like she'd been holding back a flood. "So this is it?" she snapped. Her voice sounded rusty from disuse, strained, like even her vocal cords weren't used to working anymore. "You're just what? Ignoring me forever?" I looked up, calm as stone. "You finally found your voice." She blinked, thrown off. "Don't be smug." I set the saxophone aside, leaned forward. 29 days. That's how long you went without saying a word to your husband. And when you finally did, it wasn't to talk or fix or admit anything. It was to insult me. That's all you have left. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and picked up the vase of white roses. Set them down right in front of her. Beside them, the folded note. She frowned, snatched it up, read the single line. "Thank you for the best month of our marriage." Her head snapped up, fury rising in her eyes. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I handed her the folder, the divorce papers. Her hands shook as she flipped it open. She read the second note, lips moving silently over the words. "This piece is what I want for the rest of my life. With or without you, preferably without." Her face went pale, then flushed red. "You can't be serious." I met her eyes, steady. "Dead serious. You gave me a gift this month, Heather. You showed me what life looks like without your voice tearing me down. And I liked it. A lot. So much, in fact, I want it permanently." She slammed the papers onto the table. "You're throwing away our marriage over a fight about laundry?" I laughed. Low, sharp, bitter. "This isn't about laundry. It never was. It's about respect. It's about control. And you lost both when you tried to erase me from my own home." Her voice wavered. "So that's it? After everything?" I nodded. "That's it. You can speak now. Just not to me." She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she only knew the version she could silence, manipulate, or shame into submission. That man was gone. I picked up my saxophone case, slung it over my shoulder, and headed for the door. Behind me, her voice cracked, shrill and panicked, shouting words that no longer mattered. I didn't look back. When the door shut behind me, the silence that followed was mine. 3 months later, the papers were finalized. Clean. No drama, no drawn-out battles. Just signatures, a stamp, and the quiet end of something that should have ended years ago. People asked me if I missed it. The marriage, the routines, the woman I'd spent years beside. My answer never changed. No. I don't miss a damn thing about manipulation disguised as love. I had my life back. The house felt different now. My house. The living room carried the deep grooves of my recliner, not her endless parade of decorative pillows. The kitchen smelled of steaks seared in cast iron, coffee brewed strong, bread I learned to bake on weekends. The garage. It sang every night with the buzz of the saw and the rhythm of hammers. I built shelves, tables, even a cedar chest that smelled like a forest floor when I opened it. But the best part was the music. I joined a local jazz ensemble, a ragtag group of old-timers who played for the love of it. Every Thursday night, we gathered in a dim bar downtown, neon buzzing over the door, with floors sticky from spilled beer. When I lifted my sax, the crowd leaned in. The first note carried everything. The anger, the release, the rediscovery of who I was when nobody could shut me down. I wasn't just filling with silence anymore. I was shaping it. One evening, after a set, a man clapped me on the shoulder. "Hell of a sound you've got," he said. "You play like a free man." I smiled, because that's exactly what I was. No more eggshells. No more games. No more punishment served cold. Just me, my music, my tools, and a piece I'd carved out with my own two hands. And in that silence, the real kind, the kind that comes after a life reclaimed, I finally heard what I'd been missing all along. Myself.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.